In this episode, we're going to answer the questions that has puzzled humanity for as long as anyone can remember. What is love? Now, don't hurt me on this one. It needs to be answered. Throw in some 80s cameos, a lively Saturday night, and the quest to get into the only club that matters, and you have yourselves a party. So bop your head to the right, everyone. It's time to prove that a night at the Roxbury is not that bad. Welcome to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. And you're going to find yourself wanting to dance a lot in this one because we are talking 1998's A Night at the Roxbury, and we're watching that thanks to one person. Carla from the Wed Or Behead podcast is joining us on this show. Carla, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing so well because we're talking about one of the best pieces of American cinema of all time. Okay,
you say that. What is it about this movie that made you say, no, you got to watch this?
You know, when it first came out, I was in college. And I was not going clubbing, though, because I was very much a nerd. So this was more of a I imagine this is what clubbing looks like experience. So the movie came out, and just something about it just really stuck with me. It's a movie that doesn't really ask a lot of you. And I like that in a movie. I like a movie that is simple and just fun. It also has an awesome soundtrack. And I just fell in love with Chris Kattan and Will Ferrell in this. They have like a really good chemistry in the movie. That family bond, that brotherly bond really comes to life, and it just kind of sucks you in. The movie is endlessly quotable. It has like so many things that I have just said to people throughout my entire life that they look at me and they're like, why would you say that to me? I'm like, clearly you haven't watched the best film of all time. But also it's a nostalgia thing because I ended up watching the movie 8 times in the movie theater. And then, yeah, that's how much I loved it. And a lot of those times were in the dollar movie theater because it got bounced really fast. But a friend and I watched it all of those 8 times in the movie theater. And then, of course, I bought the DVD and watched it a bazillion more times and have lovingly foisted it on many other people since then.
It's always odd too when you quote a movie, and there's always the ones that stick out, the ones that are, you just walk up, people go sup, right? But it's when you get the deep cut esoteric quotes and people just look and go, huh? I don't know how many times this happened to me with The Princess Bride.
Oh,
mm-hmm. I literally, like, anytime someone leaves the room, they're like, have fun storming the castle. They're like.
You have no idea how many times my husband had said that to me. Like, I'm leaving the house. I'm like, bye, honey. He's like, have fun storming the castle. And I'm like, oh, my Lord.
Yep. Okay, so before we get too deep into the movie, it's time to take A Night at the Roxbury and trailerize it.
2 brothers, 1 car, 1 room, 1 dream. Doug and Steve Butabi dare to ask the most important question of them all. What is love? With Chris Kattan, Will Ferrell, Dan Hedaya, and many other actors you will recognize from better movies. A Night at the Roxbury is opening its doors for you.
That's how I always describe it to people. I always describe it to people as it's about 2 brothers who are forging their own path away from their father's their family business. And people are like, oh, that actually sounds interesting. And I'm like, ha, ha, ha.
Wait till you see it.
Yeah.
So let's get into, first of all, who's in this movie. Obviously, you have the 2 brothers in Chris Kattan. This was actually his first feature film. Yes, he had been on, yes, he was on Saturday Night Live beforehand, and that's where these characters were developed. And of course, Will Ferrell. You mentioned Dan Hedaya. Molly Shannon is in this.
Yes.
WKRP's Lonnie Anderson. Richard Greco as Richard Greco. 21 Jump Street Richard Greco. And then I had to bring this up. Meredith Scott Lynn, who of course was the girl at the credit card company,
Operator 238,
who actually appeared in an episode of 21 Jump Street the year after Greco left the show.
No way!
Even though she's mostly known for being on Days of Our Lives as Ann Milbauer. Then you've got Lachlan Monroe, who played Craig, like the gym trainer, who also appeared in 4 different episodes of 21 Jump Street, each time as a different character.
Is that some kind of record?
It might be. And an uncredited appearance by Chaz Palminteri as the club owner. And not only was it the first feature film of Chris Kattan, but it's the first cinematic appearance of Eva Mendes as a bridesmaid.
Yes.
So there is
baby Eva.
There is a huge comedic cast in this that you forget just how good this cast is if it's been a while since you've seen it.
Well, and there's also Jennifer Coolidge as haughty police officer.
Right? Stifler's mom.
Like, yes. It's a whole smorgasbord of fantastic. And Elisa Donovan was also in Clueless. The 3 actors who were, 3 actors who were in Clueless who appeared in this movie are the woman who played Miss Geist, whose name I can't recall right now, Dan Hedaya, who of course played Cher's dad, and I just mentioned him and I can't remember. No, Elisa Donovan, who played Amber.
Which is probably a big thanks to the fact that Amy Heckerling, who produced Clueless, also produced this, but didn't direct it. It was directed by John Fortenberry. This was his last, and I've lost track of how many times we've had to say this. This would be the last movie he would ever direct. It wasn't the last time he did direct, but it's the last theatrical release, and it's only his second theatrical release as a director. The other one, 1995's Jury Duty, which starred Pauly Shore. So, so we got better with age. But the funny thing is, if you take a look at his TV credits as a director, you got the Ben Stiller Show, you got the Dana Carvey Show, you've got Two Guys, a Girl in a Pizza Place, Everybody Loves Raymond, Blackish. You've got a good comedy pedigree as far as a director goes. So clearly the movie was in decent hands.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think that there can be, well, obviously there can because people panned it left and right, but I think it's a solid movie in part because of the directing, and you can't even feel that this is Chris Kattan's first feature film. It really feels like he has more confidence and experience than that.
And the nice thing is there's also a lot kind of from behind the scenes. Yes, the movie was kind of written by Kattan and Farrell because it's based on their characters. Now, according to IMDb, Jim Carrey actually contributed to the script, just an uncredited contribution, which is kind of funny when you've got Chaz Palminteri calling out to Jim Carrey in the club. Also, Chris Kattan's father is in this movie as one of the flower shop customers, and it's also the movie where I'm pretty sure this is where they met. Will Ferrell met his wife Vivica Paulin, who was one of the Porsche girls. So there's a lot to this movie as far as like just who's in it and what it took to make it.
Right, and it also kind of marks the end of Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan's friendship. So, which is it's a sad thing because they come up together in I think The Groundlings, and then of course they were together in Saturday Night Live. And you can really feel in this movie that they had, like a history and a friendship, because that just really comes across the screen. So it's just very sad that their friendship ended after this. But, it feels like this movie is kind of like a vortex where things begin and end.
Yeah, it's odd when you read into the story of kind of why, they didn't speak for like a long time. I don't know if they even have still spoken to each other. I mean, obviously, as I usually say, we don't know, right? But I mean, in Chris Kattan's memoir, Baby Don't Hurt Me, he claimed that Lorne Michaels pressured him to have sex with Amy Heckerling so that she would direct. And, I think it was Heckerling's daughter that kind of came out saying, I sure would love to hear Lorne's take on this. Like, it's there's a sordid story behind here that I'm not quite sure if we'll ever hear the full story on it.
Right. It's when I first heard about it, I was kind of shocked. Well, because of everything that transpired due to that, the end of Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan's friendship, and that was because, according to Chris Kattan's book, because Will Ferrell was hurt that Chris Kattan did this without, he never told him about it. He kind of kept him in the dark about this. So he felt like it was really unprofessional, and it's also just, betraying their friendship.
Aside the fact that Kattan was actually dating Jennifer Coolidge at the time.
Was it? Oh, that's right. Wait a second. Was he?
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of somebody else. Wow. So it's like a whole ball of mess in there.
Exactly.
But, with things being what they are, and with just I feel like anybody who comes out with a claim like that, it's not something that they will say lightly. So I tend to I tend to say, okay, well, this is something that happened to that person, and it should be addressed. And it's not sufficiently addressed in particular for anybody. But I think with men, it also gets played down a lot, because it's like, oh, so you got somebody's attention, you're complaining. What's that about?
It is interesting, though, because I don't think any of that tension came across in their performances on screen in this movie.
Right.
Unlike if you take a look at, not the I think it was like Fast and Furious 8, where like The Rock and Vin Diesel were just kind of snipping at each other. And I think they were only in maybe one scene together through the whole movie. And it can't make making a film easy, but it didn't take away from what Kattan and Farrell, I think, brought to the film. Right.
And that really speaks to a level of professionalism that's commendable on both their parts. The only real part where if it did come up in the middle of this, where there's strife, is that scene on the highway when they're sniping at each other, the characters. And that's the only place where they would conceivably have informed their performances. But other than that, you can't imagine them being anything but the best of friends.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at how it was received, though. It was a $17 million budget and grossed $30 million worldwide. Keep in mind, these are $1998. So, I mean, that's actually pretty good. But when it came out, it was the third major movie to debut that weekend. It placed fourth. Number one went to Ants. Number two, also debuting, was What Dreams May Come. So, but it's still finished behind Rush Hour, like the very first Rush Hour film, which was in third. So, I mean, it's, to steal one of those lines you would use in marketing, the highest grossing comedic debut movie that, so we put as many disclaimers as you can in there. But I mean, it's still not bad for, let's be honest, Saturday Night Live sketches turned movies don't exactly have the greatest track record. And that also shows in the tomato meter. It's currently sits at an 11% tomato meter or tomatometer, but a 69% audience score. That is a massive swing, right? Normally you see like, oh, it's got like, 15 and 23 or 32 and 20. No, this goes from 11 to 69%. So before we break even that down, who to you is right, or is it really somewhere in the middle for this movie?
Oh, I think it definitely deserves the audience score of 69. I think that critics are kind of primed to be against movies based off of sketches.
Mm-hmm.
And especially around that time, because I think that there were a lot of Lorne Michaels SNL sketch movies coming out, and people were like, all right, okay, now you're just like, digging at the bottom of the barrel.
You're milking the TV show at that point.
Yeah. Well, frankly, they were.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a stretch to make this, but yeah.
But so Will Ferrell, this is tied for third for his lowest rated tomato film. Also at 11%, another Saturday Night Live sketch turned movie, The Ladies' Man. 1% lower, Holmes and Watson at 10%, which surprised me that that wasn't the lowest one. No, the lowest one is The Suburbans. This little known film, which also, if memory serves, had Jennifer Love Hewitt in it.
I think so. I think I remember when that one came out and thinking, yeah, that's not for me.
And I'll admit, I haven't seen The Suburbans yet. I'm sure I will someday. I just remember seeing like the cover of the DVD and going, oh, discount that thing you do. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, for me, The Ladies' Man, I thought that's another movie that's actually not that bad. I really enjoyed it. But I'm surprised that A Night at the Roxbury shares the distinction of being at 11% with two other Will Ferrell movies. That's way to go, my little movie.
All right, so let's get into the breakdown here, and I'm going to toss it to you first. Who stood out to you as being good acting in Night at the Roxbury?
Oh wow, okay. I really was impressed with Catan. I really thought that he did a great job because it's such a broad character and it's such a broad performance, but there was still like a lot of nuggets of truth in it. Of there was so much humanity in Doug that he wasn't quite the caricature that it could have been. Mm-hmm. Because the entire premise of the sketch is that it's these two douchebags who are perving on ladies at clubs. And then they get in a car and they bop their head to the right to Hathaway's What Is Love? And that's the whole thing. It's like, how do you stretch that into a movie? And they did it, and they made me care about it. They made me care about these two brothers. And a lot of that really relied on Chris Kattan's performance because this is what could have been a one-note character, but he has heart, he has drive, he has ambition. It's hilarious. His delivery is fantastic, and his interplay with other actors I thought was great. His interactions with Dan Hedaya were awesome. I really enjoyed seeing them bicker at each other because they're so similar. His relationship, quote unquote, relationship with Camby was right. Hilarious, and you can kind of buy that heartbreak when she tells him what's really going on. But I was really pretty impressed, and even rewatching it all of these bazillion years later, I'm still like, good job, Kattan.
I will say that the two of them together, as Steve and Doug, when you think about some of the funniest movies that kind of came out around that era, it was always that not clueless, not witless, but more, in their own world, and their world and the rest of the world kind of needs to change around them. Bill and Ted, Wayne and yes. Garth, right? Mm-hmm. Or even, for my Canadian listeners here, Bob and Doug McKenzie, getting back to that Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas duo from the SCTV days, which, by the way, go watch Strange Brew. You'll have fun. It's the one and only Bob and Doug movie. It kind of fits that mold where you just basically take two brothers and, kind of put them into that very odd scenario, and it works well. But that's the thing that works about the Butabi brothers. They're not idiots. They're not Adam Sandler characters, for lack of a better term. Yes. They're very much lost in their own world, in their own ways, and the world needs to change for them to or they need to change to match the world. And that, I think, kind of makes those characters work.
Yes, that absolutely makes sense. It does have that vibe, and it works so well. Like I said, because they pull you in because they're so likable as people. They do have more dimensions than the sketch really calls for. and their struggle, as it were, is still really relatable. If you want something and it's an impractical dream to the rest of the world, but to you it's the one thing that you really want to do.
Yep. It is very much one of those things where you see some people that are idiosyncratic, to say the least, and some will just make fun of them and brush them off. Others will sit there, point, and go, they're living their best life. Because that's what makes them happy, going to clubs, albeit not successfully, hitting on women in the clubs. I'm surprised it took them as long as it did to throw them out of some of those clubs.
Oh, yes.
I'm surprised they stayed as long as alive in the mud club as they did. But they're living their best life. And I think that what made it work too was the fact that a couple episodes ago on this podcast, we talked about the Love Guru and how I think the Love Guru would have fared better, or at least come across better, had that character been developed on SNL as a sketch. We knew the Butabis. They had been developed on SNL. They worked well in a 3-minute sketch. And that's when you can really open the door to, I want to know more about the Butabis. I want to know what their world is like outside of this club where they're bopping. What are they like when the club is closed? And that's what really kind of drew it out. And I was ready to learn the story of the Butabi brothers. I wasn't ready to learn the story of the Love Guru at the time, but the Butabi brothers, I was ready for it.
Right. It really does make a difference having that connection, even if it's just a quick sketch and there's not much to it. You're familiar with them. Mm-hmm. You know more or less what they're about, or you think you do. And it made you laugh, it made you laugh while you were watching it. So you're like, whatever, I'll just check it out. What's the worst that can happen? I'm not entertained.
Exactly. Speaking of SNL, though, can we just sit and appreciate how awesome Molly Shannon is? Because every time you put her in a movie, you put her in a role on TV, she reminds me of Tina Fey. Mm-hmm. You put Tina Fey in anything, and that role stands out. You put Molly Shannon in anything, that role stands out. She makes every scene she's in better. And she took that very much, for lack of a better term, bait and switch type character. Oh, I'm like this until I'm like this, right?
Right.
She worked it so well. And I love the chemistry between her and Farrell. Like, you saw that in SNL. It comes across here as well.
Yes. She's always surprising. She's done so much amazing work throughout her career. But every time that she's on screen, I'm very pleasantly surprised to see her anytime that she pops up. Mm-hmm. But you do get drawn to her and to her characters because she's just so magnetic. She really knows how to command attention. And it can be something broad or it can be something small, but she's really a gifted entertainer. And with this role, it's such a silly role. She runs around after Steve and is kind of pouncing on him every chance that she gets, and then as soon as they get together, suddenly it's all business. It's like, what were you thinking buying this crap? Whatever. And she's all business, and she just is there to unite the plant and the lamp shop and have the plant lamp shop, and that's it. That's her whole deal all of a sudden. But it never comes across as false. It never comes across as like a slap in the face, because all throughout there's this vein of this is just completely within who this character is. She'll do what it takes to get what she wants. And Molly Shannon tends to do that with her roles. Like, even, in as Mary Catherine Gallagher in the sketch on SNL and in the movie Superstar, it's great because it's her. Mm-hmm. And because she throws herself absolutely into every little performance and every little character. It's why one of my favorite sketches on SNL is the 50-year-old lady. She's like, I can kick and whatever, and then kick again. I'm 50 years old. And that still comes up in my mind every now and then, because I'm like, it was just so, there was such commitment to the role, and it's no different here. She's completely committed to being Emily and to just randomly telling Steve, I love making out. And I don't mean to brag, but I'm really, really good at it.
It does play into one of those, she seems sweet and innocent, but you don't know what she's like, when, in this case, it was when she's off of college. You have flashbacks of Allison Hannon going, well, this one time at band camp, those kind of characters work well. And yeah, Molly Shannon, not only is she a superstar, but but she does. She makes every scene she's in good. Same with Dan Hedaya in this.
Yes.
I don't know if you can pick a better dad for the Butabi brothers than Dan Hedaya.
He was so perfect. He was absolutely perfect. And you completely bought that relationship. It makes no sense if you're just looking at it from the outside. It's like, it's these two, first of all, they're brothers. And then second of all, and that's their dad.
Yeah.
But it completely works because Dan Hedaya is another one of those actors who gives everything into this role. And even though, much like in Clueless, this is a dad who yells a lot, it still has a very different feel. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like a carbon copy, like it's just a lazy, replica. It feels like it's its own character. So when you're seeing Mr. Butabi, you're just completely committed in your mind to the fact that this is their dad, and he's very annoyed at them because they're doing a poor job at the register, and he's yelling at his son about cutting up the plants and making them into toys. And you're a jungle theme, like all of that stuff that he yells. He's just great, and I love him. And anytime that I see him in something, I'm like, oh look, it's Mr. Butabi.
I'll admit, that line of, it's a jungle theme. You're a jungle theme. That sounds very much like that frustrated dad who's had every argument with their kid over and over again, to the point of they're just like, I'm hungry. You're hungry. No, wait, that doesn't work. Oh crap. Because you're just frustrated beyond belief that you're now arguing points of like, the kid's going to argue with you no matter what. And I found it interesting though, because when you think about it, if you take a look at the family dynamic of the Butabis, Dan Hedaya, Chris Kattan is definitely Dan Hedaya's kid in this.
Yes.
Will Ferrell is definitely Lonnie Anderson's kid in this, because you have like the kid that's going to be their dad and the kid that's going to be their mom when you're dealing with brothers, and that's kind of the way it goes. So I think like the parents together. I mean, Lonnie Anderson wasn't there that much, but I still think that if that's the wife that Dan Hedaya married, no wonder that Chris Kattan and Will Ferrell are constantly going to clubs to try to find, for lack of the better term, the trophy wife. Right. Because I don't think that they have, looking at it more deeply and psychologically, I don't think that they have, a real idea of what to do with a woman. They have no clue. And I mean, it's not even, I think, they sincerely do not have any idea. When a woman actually accepts their advances, they're like, what? And when they're actually about to have sex with them, they just flip out. And Doug, for example, keeps saying cheesy lines until Camby is fed up and says, hey, Doug, if I told you you had a nice body, would you hold it against me? And he's like, what? Because he doesn't know what to do with that. She broke him.
Yes, she broke him. But yeah, it just, you get this feeling that they've never really had much interaction with women, and their relationship with their mother, she still treats them like little kids. Mm-hmm. She runs after them to make sure that they're not leaving the house without a cell phone, even if it's a brick instead of a fancy flip phone from 1998. Oh God,
those cell phones!
Oh, I love them so much. They were so cheesy. My Funko dolls have the giant brick cell phones, and I adore that detail.
those cell phones were not just cell phones; they were personal defense weapons. They were that big.
Multi-tools.
Oh yeah,
they were multi-tools. You could really multitask back then. Now you can't really hurt anybody with an iPhone.
You'd hurt the iPhone more than you hurt the actual person.
Yes, instantly. Like, oh no, I breathed on it wrong. Now it's dead.
You pull out that cell phone. It's like, oh, they're armed. Run.
Yes, exactly. She knew what she was doing. She was preparing her boys. But yeah, there's just, you don't get the sense that there's a lot to her. And so I think that maybe they just idealize that relationship. And certainly their dad and their mom don't really interact in a significant way. So you can't really even say that their dad set a good example of what to look for. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I think that it says a lot about who they are as men, just in general, that their interactions with women are just so forced. Like maybe they went to boarding school and never met women before, and like this is their first time out of boarding school in their entire lives, and they're like, oh, I don't know, what do we do with them?
Sorry, boys, have you never womened before? Like, right? but
I do love when Gigi Rice, who plays Vivica, mm-hmm. says to Steve, "Is this your first time?" And he says, "Yes. Isn't it yours?" Like, just so earnestly, like, of course.
Mm-hmm. It does, like, by going too deep into these movies, which we do a lot on the show, you take a look at the dynamic between Lonnie Anderson and Will Ferrell. Very much the doting, mothering, like, clearly she's helped guide him through the everything to get to this point. But then the fact that, when he and Molly Shannon get together and she starts to steer the relationship in her way, it makes sense because mom probably steered him all the way to this point, and now Molly Shannon is going to steer him the rest of the way. So again, there's a lot of clever family dynamic writing in the characters, and it's pulled off. Even if Lonnie Anderson doesn't seem like she's doing much, the fact that she's not doing much almost tells more of the story as to why Will Ferrell allows Molly Shannon to kind of take control.
Well, I think that beyond that, I think Steve is just, he needs a leader. Whether it's his mom or Emily, but in between there, you have Doug guiding his every decision and his personal style and how he approaches life. And Steve's just happy to go along with whatever Doug tells him. And then when he gets together with Emily, it's like Emily decides to take charge. And so, Steve's like, okay, I guess we're doing this. So I think it's beyond the dynamic with his mom. I got the sense that, if you're looking at stereotypical family dynamics and sibling dynamics, that he would have been the younger brother and Doug would have been the older brother who was like, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the little brother's like, all right, I'm coming with you.
It felt to me, and getting back to those comparisons to other movies, Steve is Ted.
Yes.
And Doug is Bill. Steve is Garth, and Doug is Wayne. So you see that, one's a little bit more, not spacey, but very much like, very happy in their own world. And the other one's got a dream. They're determined. They're misguided, but they're determined.
Yes.
And of course, their dream leads them to Chaz Palminteri. I have to bring him up because you mentioned, the endless quotability of the film.
Yes, of course.
I think maybe when I first saw this movie, like when it first came out, I'm pretty sure, you hang around with a group of friends, go, wait, did you touch my ass? I think you want to touch my, like, I don't know why that character makes me laugh so much. And I don't even know why he's uncredited in the film. Like,
yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, it's such a good character. And yet, very much, it's almost like, and this is going to be an obscure deep cut of a film to bring up. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. It's an odd film, and there's an uncredited cameo that lasts about maybe 5 minutes by Robin Williams as the King of the Moon in this film. And it's the funniest damn part of the movie. And he's not mentioned in the credits anywhere. Chaz Palminteri, the bar owner in this, has one of the most memorable characters in this. Because, hey, he's just so freaking likable in this role.
Oh, yeah.
But he's not credited. Why?
Yeah, it really throws me that he's not credited, because I feel like he was such a big part of this movie, of, you know, not just because he had so much screen time, but also because he drives so much of the outcome of their lives. And he's just hilarious. And he's fantastic when he's asking Dewey, "Did you touch my butt?" "Sir, from where I'm standing, it's a physical impossibility." "I know your tricks, Dewey." "You have no idea how many times I've told people, I know your tricks, Dewey." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, let me live my life.
It's the obscure lines again.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, you know, he's on screen, you're smiling. That's literally what Chaz Palminteri did with this character. He's on screen, you're smiling. That just goes to show how much he made of a character, you know, that's very minor in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, he's almost the MacGuffin for the Butabi brothers, in that there's that line where after Greco gets them into the Roxbury, and they're being brought to the VIP, you know, and Doug goes like, "That's who we want to be." It's like, "I thought we want to be Greco." It's like, you know, looks and money in car, yes, but, you know, career, that's guy. You know, it's
right.
It is. He's very much you know, the business MacGuffin for them. And yeah, I say it again, could not stop smiling when his character was in the scene.
Yeah, but it's also because of the energy that he brings to it. He comes into it with full force, and, you know, he's just so loud and energetic and bombastic. But he's not douchey about it. Mm-hmm. You know, he's genuinely, seems like a genuinely nice guy. He meets these total randos, and not only is he like, "Come sit with me. They seem like good boys," but then he listens to their wild ideas for nightclubs, and he listens to them put down his other nightclub, and takes it in stride. Like, "I also own that place," and they're like, "Sorry that we just, you know, trashed it." But then even after he proceeds with implementing their idea for a new nightclub, he's already written them into the contract. So he doesn't just go and steal their ideas. He doesn't kick them out for being nobodies, and he doesn't put down their suggestions just because they're strangers. He's just like happy to listen to people who are interested in the same things that he's interested in. And I really love that. And it's always like with a smile, and, you know.
It is interesting because at their heart, Steve and Doug, they're good boys. These are good boys. I like these boys. These are good boys, right?
Yeah.
and Chaz, like, as an LA club owning businessman, you know, you could see, you know, not the tendency, but the trope of making them like I'm going to steal your ideas, I'm going to cut you out, and all this kind of stuff. No, he's a good guy. He likes good boys. It's, you know, everything around him is good because he treats everyone around him good. And I think that just makes this character that much more likable. I don't know if someone other than Chaz Palminteri could do that.
You know, I don't know. And it's really a blessing, the casting in this movie. Mm-hmm. You know, however accidental it may have been, who knows? But he's just perfect in this role. And no, I can't imagine anybody else bringing that to the role and having you just fall in love with him, basically.
Mm-hmm. If you took someone who's a bit louder, right? You put a Tommy Lee Jones in that role, and it doesn't come across as genuine. You know, you take and I'd have to double check to see if he was still alive at the time, Sam Kinison in the role, you know, for a loud character. It doesn't come across that well. Heck, you even put Jim Carrey, who, of course, you know, did a little bit of the rewriter, contributed to it a bit. And it doesn't come across because it's too over the top. It's almost that perfect level of, manic energy. It doesn't come across as over crazy. It doesn't come across as sleazy. It's good manic fun.
It's the perfect level, because just like you were saying, I can't imagine Jim Carrey in any of the roles that were in this movie. And I know that one of the funny things with it is that the most famous one of the SNL sketches of the Butabi brothers is the one with Jim Carrey in it. Where even to this day, my husband jokes, wasn't it three guys in the car? And I'm like, Jim Carrey was not part of the Butabi brothers in the show. But yeah, absolutely. His energy level would have read so kind of smarmy even, which is something that this character could have been. But with this performance, it was just so sincere and just so happy and just so eager to, to connect with people that he thinks are nice people.
One of the people I want to bring up from the film, and I'm going to say the name, and unless you know, right, you're like, oh, that guy, because this guy's definitely much that guy from that film, and you don't quite know their name, but Lachlan Monroe, who plays Craig in this. And again, it's one of those times where you're watching the movie and it's like, oh, he's that guy from that film. Because he's been in a lot.
Yes.
The fact that he was able to play 4 characters in 21 Jump Street over 4 different episodes over, I think, four different years. But, what were your thoughts on Craig? I mean, I know what I thought, but I'm curious your thoughts on Craig.
Listen, I love Craig. I think he's fantastic. And I've seen Lachlan Monroe in other stuff and, in some dramas. I think he was in a Criminal Minds episode a few years back where he was somebody who was shady. And it's such a different energy from Craig. And I think that this was a really skilled performance because Craig he's kind of like Steve, that they're both just kind of in their own little worlds. They're not especially, good at reading people for their intentions. That just they're their own little special breed of human. But he's also just so likable because he's so earnest and so friendly, and he wants to be a good friend to Doug and Steve. He does also want Emily, but he doesn't do anything skeezy to get her.
He's far too respectable.
Yes.
Far too respectable.
Yes.
It's you have to think that if Craig was actually a Butabi boy, Craig would probably be the middle child.
Yes.
With dad kind of leaning on Doug and mom pampering Steve. Craig comes across as that guy who would probably I got to fend for myself. I'm going to be happy about it. I'm going to set my own way. I don't need to literally the brightest ray of sunshine in this movie is Craig. And like you mentioned, he's done a lot of dramatic roles, but I also remember from other roles where it's he plays this lighthearted, fun, very optimistic character. He is he's almost like the male version of Molly Shannon in that, again, you put him in anything and he's going to take that role and make it run. I'm surprised Lachlan Monroe is not I'm not going to say a big name because clearly he is a well-working actor, but surprised he's not as more recognized as he should be because of what he's able to do with these roles.
Right. I think he's just one of those character actors who does such a good job of blending into the role and into the, not background, but into the environment of whatever he's in, that we kind of take it for granted. Another great character actor is, Beth Grant. Mm-hmm. Beth Grant, who's been in, Donnie Darko, The Mindy Project, and just a bazillion things. You know her as soon as you see her face, but she's not a bigger name. But that's because, any role that she takes, she just knocks out the performance out of the ballpark, but in such a subtle way that she's there, but she's not taking up too much of the heat off of the main stars.
Yeah, they're there to hoist the script, hoist the scene, anchor everything, and not take the spotlight, but point the spotlight where it needs to be pointed. Like,
yeah,
the production crew was happy or lucky to get as good an actor as Lachlan Monroe and Molly Shannon as well. To anchor those roles because they bring so much to it.
Right. And all of this is part of why I think this movie works so well, because you do have this roster of great talent that they each bring a lot to their respective characters. Their performances are all great, and there's really never a moment in which you feel like you're taken out of the movie, because everybody in it is just so in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you really feel like this is a full world that you're stepping into.
Let's talk about that world. Okay. Basically the whole story of Night at the Roxbury. We talked about, the success / failure rate of SNL skits turned to movies. And the ones that work really kind of take the characters and just show you their world, as opposed to taking the character and let's put them in a wacky situation and see what happens. This was very much let's show you the world of the Butabees. And I think that goes a long way in making this one of the more, I can't really say successful, right? Because at 11%, it's not necessarily successful. It's not a money loser, but it's not Wayne's World. It's not Coneheads, right? It's, it's Night at the Roxbury, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because it was an easily digestible film.
Yes, that's well put. I think that for all of the failures that the SNL skit movies have had and all of the massive successes, this is definitely somewhere in the middle. And you're right, it is because they're just showing you an expanded version of the world that you see in the skit. If you really think about it, the only time that you really truly see the world in the skit is the very beginning, before they're kicked out of the club. Because that's when you see them, they're doing their shtick from the skit with wiping their noses and dancing, like bouncing a girl between them, dancing and everything. They get kicked out, and suddenly they're outside of the club, and they're not in the car. Oh my gosh, what's going on? That's when the movie really begins. But it's not a jarring thing because they're still the same characters that they were inside the club. It's just that you're seeing the rest of the world. And I think it also helps that because they were so thinly written on SNL, when they're getting fleshed out, they were fleshed out in such a way that they didn't carry that douchiness of kind of accosting women into the rest of the world. There's more of an innocence that's afforded to them in the movie, because they really could have written it differently. They could have decided, okay, well, these guys are just creepy douchebags, and that's what we're going to do. They're just, the whole movie is going to be devoted to them trying to get a girl, and that's not what happens. The whole movie is devoted to them trying to get their dream of starting a club.
I think if you take a look at at the Wayne's World model, if you will, because Wayne's World might be at least the pinnacle of Saturday Night Live sketches turned into movies. Again, I still love Coneheads. I think Coneheads is great, but I think I think on a grand scale, Wayne's World probably hit all the right hits. But that first Wayne's World movie, it is very much like this is their life outside of their own little cable TV studio, and this is just happening. But if you take a look at Wayne's World 2, when they try to put on Wayne stock, that's when it gets into when he's having the dream sequence with the half naked Indian guy walking around in the desert, and it becomes a little bit more not as easily relatable as the first Wayne's World. The first Wayne's World, again, just expands on the story of the characters that you already know. Second Wayne's World Let's take those characters, put them into the wacky plot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost glad that we don't have a Night at the Roxbury 2, because I'd be scared to see what quote unquote wacky scenario they're going to put them in, unless Night at the Roxbury 2 focuses on Lachlan Monroe and Molly Shannon. That one I'm fine with. Yeah, let's follow them now. That'd be fine.
Right. Well, it's interesting. Like I there's a lot of stuff that I like about Wayne's World too, and most of it really has to do with Garth and his kind of personal growth, and a couple of scenes here or there where Mike Myers speaks in Mandarin, and then there's when he played Al Bundy.
Is it Ed Harris? The name is escaping me.
No,
yes,
not Ed Harris.
But I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So, and he has that prolonged speech about, like da da da, and it gets very scary and very dark. So you have all of these little bits that work really well, but as a whole, the movie doesn't. And yes, it suffers from what happens very often in movies and franchises like these, where they take something that works and they take out the reason why it works. Because they think that they have to do this. And like I was saying at the beginning, A Night at the Roxbury doesn't ask you for much. Wayne's World doesn't ask you for much. Wayne's World 2 asks you for too much. It asks you to believe that these guys are going through all of these weird things that has no business happening to them. And I think more than anything, that's really why it doesn't succeed. It's because it suddenly makes demands of you to follow them outside of where they live and where you've seen them. And in a lot of senses, part of what a sequel will do to Crash is make its characters either stagnate too much or grow up too much. Like there seems to be no in between with bad sequels.
I can see that. I every time now I think about sequels, I don't know if you've seen Free Guy or not. All I hear is Taika Waititi going, IPs and sequels, and that's pretty much all of our movies today. But I also love that you brought up the bits, the parts that we loved about it, and then they expanded on it. Yes, we got the head bopping. Yes, we heard What Is Love. Head bopping into the window was the perfect way to expand on it. But there were a lot of just little, not even just sight gags, but just little comedic bits and beats in this script that really do make this like you're enjoying yourself the entire hour and a half all the way through. There's no slowdowns. There's no, esoteric moments where they're trying to, get in touch with whatever no, you're going to laugh for an hour and a half, and that's exactly what they set out to do, and that's exactly what they did.
Right. And it's funny too, because even though you're just laughing the whole time, there are some really heartfelt moments where you really feel for them. When Camby and Vivica break up with them because they turn out to not be these rich guys that they thought that they were. It's like, oh, that's really crappy of them, poor boys. When Steve is getting everybody sad in the flower shop because he's used to seeing Doug at the register, and suddenly Doug's not at the register because Doug has stormed off and moved out to the guest room. And his father comes over to him like, what is the matter? You're making everybody cry. And he's like, I just miss Doug. He's across in the guest room.
In the pool house.
There's cable. Yeah. He's like, there's cable there, but there's no HBO. And even though it's such a silly moment, you still feel like, oh my gosh, he really misses his brother. And of course, the big emotional scene where Steve is marrying Emily and Doug shows up playing the boombox with What Is Love.
Straight out to Say Anything.
Oh, absolutely. Totally. But like I remember the first time that I watched it, like I got a little bit teary because I was like, oh, he really, they really do love each other. They really do have this wonderful sibling relationship that is just so beautiful and so pure. Because I feel like that's another thing. There aren't enough movies in which relationships between male characters are just this pure, where they just really love each other, they care about each other, and there's no shame in how they show it to each other. There's just not enough of that, you know?
It is a surprisingly... It's funny because as we're talking about this, you know, we're talking about Lachlan Monroe being a ray of sunshine. We're talking about, you know, Molly Shannon being like this driven yet not stupid, crazy driven kind of character. We're talking about positive family dynamics and all of this. There is a lot of really pure and wholesome stuff in a movie about two guys who like to go back on women in clubs. Like,
yes.
Like when you look at it, and I think that's probably what people aren't picking up on this. I think that's why you see such a massive swing in the tomato meter versus the audience score. The audience gets it. And I think critics kind of go into a Saturday Night Live movie pretty much with their knives already drawn and ready to stab them like it's you know, the Ides of March. Like it's pretty much like they already have it in their mind that they're not going to like this film. The audience is usually the one you should probably listen to. And the fact that they're saying at 69%, they're saying this is a good movie, like that tells you all you need to know. But even some of those comedic beats too, the fact that they were able to use wardrobe as a comedy bit, like there are some garish, to put it lightly, outfits. Like there is no sense of ego in these two guys wearing some of the clothes that they wore, and it just makes it funny.
The bathing suit. Just look at the bathing suit when they're strutting down the beach in their teeny tiny Speedos with their butts hanging out, and there's they're not being the least bit precious about it. You know, they're just walking down the beach,
in their butt
talking
floss
to each other about business. Yeah, and then occasionally getting distracted by a beautiful woman that they have to stop and say, "What's up?"
You know,
like you're from out of town. There's no self-consciousness at all, and it's funny to see too, because you know I think about how with women there's always the expectation that if you're going to be unself-conscious about your body, it's going to be used as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
You know that if it's you're either just there to be sexy or to be comedy.
Not. Yeah.
Right, and it's a really gross double standard, because here are these two guys who can just use their body however they want, and there's really nothing ascribed to it aside from the fact that that it's just the gag isn't their bodies. The gag is that they turn around and they're basically wearing thongs, which is unexpected. But as they're walking forwards, it's not especially funny that they're, you know, wearing tiny briefs. So it's a very unselfconscious move, but then it also makes you especially I think if you're a woman, it makes you think about like all of the things that women would have to go through to not go through, but all of the things that women are subjected to when it comes to what they wear at the beach and all the expectations that come with what your body should look like. But then also like all of the other outfits, the mesh shirt outfit that they're wearing towards the beginning as they're walking to Staying Alive.
Yep.
It's an iconic outfit. I love that club outfit so much. Just in the daytime they're wearing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that's one of those scenes that really kind of pointed me towards the director, you know, John Fortenberry. And there is a lot of smart directorial moves, and they're subtle, right? Mm-hmm. But that's Saturday Night Fever walk all by itself, because it was so like matched tone and camera angle and feel of the whole thing. Like you have to sit there and really appreciate where the thing came from to make sure that you pull it off well. Even the choreographed dance scene at the Roxbury.
Yes.
Right. The first thought that crossed my mind was the movie Airplane, when they're doing the flashback. And I think like even the part where he's lifting Chris Kattan and swinging him around by the waist, that's almost like pulled directly from Airplane. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went back, looked at that scene and said, here's what we want to build from, let's make it bigger.
Right. And also my understanding is that a good part of the dance with the girls is like a direct copy from My Blue Heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and they pull it off really well. And one of the, I keep bringing up their relationship as brothers and how seamless it is, that they spend like half of that dance dancing with each other. It's like, this is what they're used to. So they're just going to dance with each other until the girls are like, hey, pay attention to us. Mm-hmm. But it's oh my gosh, I love those little things so much. And these are definitely not t-shirt and jeans guys. Like, you never see them particularly dressed down.
No, these are the guys who would literally mow the lawn in a bright neon suit because they wouldn't do anything, if they weren't, ready for the club at all times.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure. I can vividly picture that right now, where they're matching suits and, like one is in one color, one is in the other, but like just all the way up and down. Absolutely.
Yep. Saying to everyone as they walk by, sup.
That's the only way it could happen.
We can't talk about this movie and not talk about the biggest star of the movie, and that's the soundtrack.
Yes.
Like, What Is Love aside, because you knew that song had to be there. And now, by the way, if it's not stuck in your head as you're listening to this podcast, it's going to be. The minute someone says, what is love? If your response right after is, baby, don't hurt me no more afterwards, you're not Hadawaying right. But
correct.
But
yes.
As you go through like the full soundtrack, what was if some of the jokes are one note jokes, this could have been a one song joke all the way through, but they filled it with a catchy as hell soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a great soundtrack. It has, This Is Your Night. It even has Everybody Hurts, which was like an unexpected, out of left field thing. I also liked that, when you were mentioning that it could have been a one song joke kind of thing. And it wasn't, which is the only reason why it was so effective when they used the music version of What Is Love in the elevator.
Oh, I love that scene.
Yeah, because if they had used that movie just incessantly throughout the whole way through, it would have really felt like, all right, we got it. Okay, we got it. But they didn't do that. So it was extra funny that they have like the music version and they're just like gently bopping their heads in the elevator.
It's very much like, there's only one movie that can pull off hearing the same song over and over and over again, and that's That Thing You Do.
Yes.
Right. If you think about like the classic Mortal Kombat films, every time you hear the Mortal Kombat, no, just stop it, please stop. But yes, I think they used an almost restrained use of What Is Love, which made it even more. I do have to point out a crime for this film, though. There's an absolute crime. In 1998, of the Billboard Top 100 albums, throughout the entire year, only 3 movie soundtracks hit number 1. This was not one of them.
How?
Right?
You know what? Okay, if we're going to invent a time machine, it should be to go back and correct this egregious error.
Now, admittedly, Jay-Z kind of took over October on the Billboard Top 100 charts. But of the 3 soundtracks that made it to number 1 on the Billboard Top 100 that year, Titanic, okay.
All right.
City of Angels.
Okay, it has like 2 songs that I can think of, but okay.
Yeah, I think that was mainly because of Iris from the Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah.
That would have pushed it up. And Armageddon. Probably because I Don't Want to Miss a Thing from Aerosmith.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's because What Is Love? I mean, it's a 5-year-old song by the time this movie comes out. So I wonder if that's why it didn't hit number 1. But in hindsight now, if they ever release a Night at the Roxbury Muzak CD, you know, so Night at the Roxbury's Elevator, I'm totally fine. Or Elevator at the Roxbury. I want Elevator at the Roxbury. This needs to happen now.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's gonna win a Grammy right there. You just gave away a Grammy-winning idea.
If they do come out now with Elevator at the Roxbury.
You heard it here first, okay?
Right. Credit us. You invite us to the movie. And when we walk down the red carpet, we start going like this. It's all good.
That's all we ask for.
Now, I put it out on Twitter as to, if the Twitterverse had anything to say about this film. Sophie Strutz chimed in with, makes me laugh, great movie, a classic, really. And good friend Anthony, Monkey Noodles, put it out there as, I love that movie. It's hilarious. Me and a friend of mine at the time would always imitate their head bobbing dance move when we'd hear a pop song at work. I always love when their skits were on SNL. I have to ask you, because you love this film, how many times a week do you find yourself bopping your head?
Constantly. Like I do it frequently. My son knows how to do it. He's 8. My husband, he's perfectly fine with it because he has no choice. But yeah, I mean, like I bop when I was watching the movie earlier, I would bop my head along with them. I do it to random songs. Now it's my go-to dance move because I'm not very coordinated. So this works for me really well. It's also a very good upper body workout. Very effective for those neck muscles.
It's almost like the dance version of headbanging. Which when you consider that them at the dance club looks like a mosh pit, it kind of works.
Right.
Now,
yeah, it's perfect for that.
You do realize before we get to our MVP, I have to put this out there. Seeing as how you are the co-host of the Bed, Wed, and Behead podcast. Bed, Wed, and Behead, Doug, Steve, Craig.
Oh,
I'm going to put you on the spot with this one.
Oh, this is the moment I've always dreamed of and never thought it could happen. Oh my goodness. Okay. I think that what's going to have to happen is that I bed Craig because I feel like that enthusiasm would be put to very good use. I then think that I wed Doug because he has ambition and he is smart. He would always find a way to get me into the best clubs. And if not, he could just tell me that story about Emilio Estevez over and over again. I don't mind.
Emilio!
It's totally fine. Emilio! And unfortunately, that leaves me to behead Steve. And that's only because a choice had to be made. And I really think that he needs too much out of people. So yeah, I don't know that I want to be all of that to a person.
Klinger's going to get killed. That's the way it's going to be.
What about you? What would be your choices?
Oh God. You know what? I think I'm going to behead Doug. Because I have a feeling that if anyone's going to take me down the wrong road, it's Doug. So I'm just going to decapitate that problem right there. Right. I think I'm going to marry or wed Craig. Because again, there's ambition, there's a plan there. And True. Which means that I'm betting Steve because I have 42 seconds to kill.
That's a very good point.
I think I broke Carla. I broke Carla.
Yes, you did. You broke me with the truth.
Okay, who is your MVP of Night at the Roxbury?
My MVP is going to have to be Doug. I really feel like he really drives the story, even though he doesn't drive the car ever, which what is up with that? You know, he's just like averse to driving. Maybe Steve's just a better driver. Maybe he doesn't have a license. I hadn't thought of that.
It's quite possible.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, I think he's really the driving force behind the whole Butabi train. Without him, Steve would probably just never leave the house.
I think I have to go co-MVPs on this one. And it's not Doug and Steve. I think I have to go with Molly Shannon and Lachlan Monroe, the happy couple at the end of the film who are going to make this happen and, start to think about, infomercials with their with their plan. Which I love the fact that there's like a little ad for like his power bar at the end of the credits. Again, I love fun credits at the end of a film. But again, Molly Shannon, Lachlan Monroe, I don't think they should be lauded more for what they bring to any film. And their characters made this movie more than just, bopping heads and dudes in clubs, and just filled out the world. Yes. I mean, I stand by mine, but I absolutely love your choices. Carla, thank you so much for bringing this movie to us. Where can we find the Wed, Or Behead podcast, and where can we find you out there on the interwebs?
Well, you can find Wed, Or Behead podcast wherever fine podcasts are found. And you can find our Twitter at Wed Behead Pod. And Instagram, we are at bed.wed.behead.pod. If you like to wade into cesspools, we're also on Facebook. Just look for Wed, Or Behead podcast. And if you want to talk to me, you can find me on Twitter as well. That is at Carla Temis. That's CarlaTemis.
Carla, thank you so much for this. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of It's Not That Bad. Now, here's the deal. If you can think of a movie that you think is unfairly maligned or just bad enough that there's no way in hell that I'm going to be able to find anything good to say about this film, hit me up on Twitter at NotThatBadcast. Let me know. We'll watch it. We'll dissect it. We'll probably regret our life choices afterwards, but that's okay. We're going to go down that road to prove to you that the movies out there that are unfairly maligned, low tomato meter be damned, they're not that bad. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Until next time, take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.